Severe weather is about to ramp up in a big way, marking the beginning of a very active pattern ahead. Over the next 7 days, multiple storm systems will line up, bringing repeated rounds of severe weather from the Great Plains through the Ohio Valley and into Dixie Alley. We're expecting a marginal risk of severe weather today, but the bigger concern arrives as a stronger system moves in from Monday through Wednesday. This will bring a widespread threat of severe weather across much of the southern United States. All hazards will be possible, including very large hail, damaging winds, and even a few tornadoes. We're entering another highly active weather pattern, so let's break down the forecast. There's a lot to cover today, starting with the severe weather potential over the next several days. We will see multiple chances for damaging winds, hail, and isolated tornadoes. This activity begins today in a relatively localized area across Missouri and Illinois, especially near Springfield, Illinois, extending towards St. Louis. The main threats this afternoon into the evening will be isolated large hail and strong wind gusts. Moving into tomorrow, the risk becomes more widespread. Scattered severe storms are expected during the afternoon and evening, stretching from around Wichita Falls, Kansas, up toward Detroit, Michigan. While this is not expected to be a major outbreak, isolated hail and damaging winds will still be possible. This setup is somewhat atypical for this time of year. However, the greater concern comes on Tuesday and Wednesday. The Storm Prediction Center has already outlined a slight risk of severe weather from Missouri down into the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, with a broader marginal risk surrounding that area. Even though the overall risk level may not appear extreme right now, conditions could support the development of a few supercells on Tuesday afternoon and evening. These storms could produce very large hail, potentially up to baseball size or even larger, along with damaging winds and a few tornadoes. It will be important to stay weather aware, especially across the southern plains into the Mississippi River Valley. Looking ahead, Wednesday currently stands out as the most concerning day of the week. There's potential for a more significant severe weather event, possibly even a tornado outbreak. A slight risk is already in place from central Texas to Birmingham, Alabama. One key factor for Wednesday will be storm mode. If storms organize into a linear system, the tornado threat may be lower, but damaging winds would become the primary concern. On the other hand, if discrete supercells develop, the environment could support multiple tornadoes due to strong southwesterly winds and favorable atmospheric conditions. This environment is going to become increasingly favorable for rotating supercells, which is why Wednesday is a day we need to watch very closely. Now, let's break down the timing of these storms, starting with today. Today is not expected to be anything extreme. We could see a few hail-producing storms develop after sunset across parts of Missouri and Illinois. This is one of those situations where it's smart to stay aware and take basic precautions, but there's no need for major concern. The tornado threat is very low. Most of the storms will be elevated, producing hail around quarter to half-dollar size, along with a few isolated wind gusts near 60 miles per hour. As we move into Monday, storm coverage becomes a bit more widespread. Storms are expected to develop during the mid to late afternoon, particularly around the Chicago and Michigan areas. The main threats will once again be isolated hail and gusty winds. There's still no reason to be overly concerned on Monday. This is not shaping up to be a major severe weather event. However, if you have outdoor plans, like a baseball game, you'll want to keep an eye on the sky. Conditions will support isolated damaging wind gusts. Storms will become more widespread into the evening and overnight hours, stretching from Kansas City through parts of Ohio. Wind gusts between 40 and 60 miles per hour are possible, along with some isolated larger hail. Now, Tuesday is a very different story. Tuesday has the potential to be significantly more impactful. We're expecting stronger wind shear and a much more organized storm system. This is because a new low-pressure system will be moving in from the Rockies, unlike the current system, which is tied to a stronger upper-level low spinning over Canada. That Canadian system is pulling in cooler air, which limits storm intensity. The Tuesday system, however, will be more dynamic. As it moves over the Rockies, it will enhance atmospheric mixing, allowing warmer and cooler air to interact more aggressively. Combined with strong southwesterly flow, this will create a much more favorable setup for severe storms. While Tuesday may not turn into a full-scale outbreak, there is a solid risk for large hail, damaging winds, and a few tornadoes. By late afternoon into early evening, around 5 to 6 p.m., key ingredients for tornado development will increase across parts of Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. Any supercell that develops in this environment could quickly become severe. If you're located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, southeastern Oklahoma near Idabel, and extending into Fort Smith and Little Rock, it's important to stay weather-aware heading into Tuesday afternoon and evening. One of the more notable aspects of Tuesday is the potential for very high, significant tornado parameter values by the evening hours. This indicates that the atmosphere could become highly supportive of tornado development, especially across the Dallas-Fort Worth region and southern Oklahoma. The one piece of good news is that storm coverage may remain limited during that time. In other words, even though the environment could strongly support tornadoes, there may not be many storms available to actually take advantage of it. This environment may not be fully utilized until after sunset, but it is a trend we'll need to monitor very closely. Let's walk through the timing as we head into tomorrow night and into Tuesday. Scattered showers and storms will gradually weaken during the early morning hours on Tuesday. Then, as we move into the early to mid-afternoon, we expect supercells to begin developing near Springfield, just south of St. Louis. These initial storms will have the potential to produce large hail and possibly an isolated tornado, especially as they interact with a nearby boundary, which could locally enhance the tornado risk. However, the more concerning area will likely be farther south across Oklahoma and Texas. A few supercells are expected to develop near the Red River Valley. Any storm that forms in this region could quickly become severe, with the potential for very large hail, possibly the size of baseballs or even larger, and the risk of a significant tornado as we head into Tuesday afternoon and evening. Now, going back to the tornado potential near the Dallas-Fort Worth area after sunset, there is some good news. Current forecasts suggest that storm development may be limited in this area due to a strong cap in the atmosphere, which could prevent storms from forming. That said, if the forecast changes and storms do manage to develop, we would need to monitor the area closely for a possible nighttime tornado risk. For now, though, confidence in that scenario remains low. By around 9 to 10 p.m., we expect scattered to numerous storms across northwest Arkansas, including areas near Fayetteville, extending toward Cape Girardeau. The primary threats here will be very large hail and damaging winds, while the tornado risk should remain relatively low. As we move into the overnight hours Tuesday into early Wednesday, these storms are expected to organize into clusters while pushing eastward into Arkansas and Tennessee. This will bring an increasing threat of damaging winds, especially for areas near Memphis and Nashville, where residents should be prepared for gusty conditions overnight. Now, looking ahead to Wednesday, this is where the forecast becomes much more uncertain. The main challenge right now is determining the storm mode. In simple terms, we're trying to understand how these storms will organize. At this point, there are two main scenarios. The first scenario involves discrete supercells developing across parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. If this happens, we could see individual rotating storms capable of producing tornadoes. In this case, the risk would be higher, and strong to potentially intense tornadoes could not be ruled out. The second, and one that currently appears more likely, is a more clustered storm mode. In this setup, storms would merge into lines or clusters, leading to a greater threat of widespread damaging winds, along with the possibility of a few embedded tornadoes within those lines. Overall, Wednesday remains a tricky forecast, but in general, if you live anywhere from Texas through Tennessee, it will be important to stay weather aware as this system evolves. We should have better clarity as higher resolution model data becomes available, so expect important updates soon. After Wednesday, the severe weather threat doesn't completely go away. We're still expecting a lingering risk into Thursday. I don't expect Thursday's setup to be particularly significant, as this low-pressure system is not especially strong or well-organized. However, we could see a few isolated supercells develop along the East Coast, stretching from Florida up through Maryland. These storms may bring some hail, gusty winds, and a brief isolated tornado threat.
Friday, on the other hand, looks like a relatively quiet and pleasant day for much of the country. By Saturday, we'll begin to see severe weather chances return to the central and southern plains, which could set the stage for a more active pattern once again, with the potential for stronger storms spreading into the Mississippi Valley and parts of the southeast as we head into Sunday and Monday. Beyond that, the forecast becomes more uncertain in the longer term. The good news is that we're not currently seeing signs of a prolonged, widespread outbreak pattern like the one that wrapped up April, at least not for the first week and a half or possibly even 2 weeks of May. However, this is still the peak of severe weather season. That means significant storms can develop on almost any given day, especially outside of the quieter period we're expecting today and tomorrow. For those who enjoy early spring-like conditions, there's more good news. Cooler air will continue to push into parts of the Midwest, as well as the central and northern plains, even into the middle of the week. A fairly strong cold front will move southward, reaching the Gulf Coast by late week and into the weekend. If you enjoy this kind of pattern, it's definitely something to appreciate. It's not very